back, weeks now of driving into Idaho Falls, Idaho with my wife on a little Yellowstone weekend getaway, going up to Missoula to see Pearl Jam, and looking down onto my phone where we all get good news, bad news, and otherwise. And between getting dropped off at the front door and checking in, I found out that life in College Park will not be the same anytime soon. Don Markus is here. He has covered the Terps for as long as, quite frankly, I can remember at the Baltimore Sun. We were colleagues, full disclosure, from 1986 to 1992. When we worked together at the Baltimore Sun, he's still there and trying to pick up the pieces of the aftermath. First off, you can follow Don. He's out on Twitter, of course, being the good professor of all things, ethics and journalism and life and all that good stuff. Boy, there's a lot of lessons here and all hard ones, man, and I know you spend a lot of time on college campuses as an educator and as a journalist, and you've been at this game at Maryland since bias. Boy, this is treacherous all the way around, and I have no idea what's going to happen here, Don.
And guess what? I don't either, but I think we know where it's heading. It appears to be heading in a place where, with the Board of Regents taking the power of these investigations out of the hands of Wallace Lowe and Damon Evans, you have to think that the Board of Regents really not happy with the way this thing has been handled, and really not happy with the way that, it certainly appears that a certain Baltimore law firm is sort of pulling the strings down in College Park and have been for a while. So I think that it appears that it's being, heading toward a house cleaning, or certainly a couple of people losing their jobs outside of the people who, unfortunately, did not provide Jordan McNair with proper treatment on that field that day.
I don't know what to be shocked by anymore, right, in our culture. And I guess the jumping off point and the 3 days I had driving around the mountains, and I didn't even talk about it on the radio for, my gosh, 9 days until after the incident became crystallized, and I'm only really a week into talking about it now, even though it's a 2-month-old, obviously an incident with a local kid here, and all the tentacles that have been a part of this. But it still comes back to me to how does this happen in the modern era, in the cell phone era, in the university setting where all of these problems have been so magnified, going back to bias and anywhere else where tragedies have happened, that this would be everyone's nightmare, and you would make sure this could never happen under your watch if you're an athletic trainer or if you're a football coach, right? I mean, that's the part that I still stand astonished at, the fat shaming and all of walk like a man, be a man, all the toughness. I get all of that, but then the kid dies, and I don't know do these people know where the line is? I mean, that's where are the scruples in all of this?
Well, first of all, I mean, they made it pretty clear, it seems, at the press conference that this is not about DJ Durkin. DJ Durkin's name did not come up at that press conference. They did not put any of the blame on any of the coaches or on Durkin. It was clearly on the trainers, and I don't think it was a matter of throwing the trainers under the bus, because DJ Durkin was had already been thrown under the bus. So I think for other reasons, for the toxic culture, that allegedly was going on, which I'm highly skeptical about. Okay, so I think it really comes down to a very simple thing: how do you not take a kid's temperature? How do you not put him in a ice bath just as a precaution, even if he's not showing the classic signs of heat stroke? You would think that they would just do those simple things, and they could find out if he is suffering from heat stroke, and just that alone tells me where the responsibility is, and that is on the trainers, or at least on the trainer. We don't know which specific trainer was treating him, was with him, but and that's the thing that we, all these media outlets like the Sun and the Post and ESPN and whoever else have asked for the video, and the video still hasn't come out. I'm sort of surprised it hasn't come out.
Yeah.
Because if there is a video, because I don't know if I honestly don't know if they shoot video of conditioning sessions. I really don't know. But I know there is video. It might just be security video of him around the building and him being treated near the building and then going in the building. But if there is, video, we'd like to see it just so everybody knows. They talk about transparency in College Park. They've been anything but transparent on this whole thing. We still haven't talked, at least in terms of them setting up any interviews. I did some stuff on my own and finally got tired of waiting and through channels started speaking to current players about this situation. Forget the season. This was just about the culture of the football team. And so, I think the transparency that they say they, are trying to give everybody is, that it has been anything but. So I think that there's a lot of issues, and I think eventually it's going to lead to some sort of house cleaning in College Park athletics and in the university itself.
You can follow Don's work at Sports Prof. That's PROF56, Sports Prof 56, out on Twitter as well as at the Baltimore Sun as this story continues to unfold. Don, where were you when Len Bias died? I've asked this question because, the walking into the Idaho Falls hotel is sort of my moment. I looked down on my phone, I saw the story, and I said, man, this is sort of a biased moment. I was in the Baltimore Sun newsroom with Larry Harris, Mike Marlowe, Bob Nusgard. It was an early morning. I think Marty Kaiser had just walked into the newsroom. It was 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning. There was an urgent bulletin. And I worked there 6 years. I don't ever remember. I was there when the Challenger blew. There was a lot of breaking news type of stuff, and elections were always a big deal. There were some weird murders and police involved and all that. I don't remember a day quite like the Bias news story during my tenure at the Sun from '86 to '92.
Well, the interesting thing is, you were talking about your recent trip, or your trip to Yellowstone and Idaho. I was in Israel when it happened, and my wife and I were we had a 3-week trip to Israel, and it brought back very interesting and sad memories of 1986 because there I had just finished covering the U.S. Open. For whatever reason, I'm not quite sure. I guess it was because the draft was on a Monday night in those days. And I guess I couldn't get credentialed because it was in New York. It was at Shinnecock, but I think I didn't get credentialed because they didn't know if there was a 36-hole playoff. So I think they sent Alan Goldstein, our longtime NBA guy at the time, up there to cover the draft because Lenny was going to go number 2, and or went number 2. And so I went out. I was playing golf that morning out there, not at Shinnecock, but somewhere else out there. And got back to the hotel, and I got this cryptic message in the front of. We were staying in a little B&B, and I got this cryptic message, but I put it together, and I realized, holy, you know what? Len Bias has died. And I went and turned on the TV, and I think my wife already had the Today Show on. This is before cell phone, so she couldn't call me. And that was sort of the end of my vacation. At least here, my office didn't demand that I come back from Israel to cover it, because if that case, I'd probably be retired by now. I'd probably still be in Israel.
Well, I guess for old guys like you and me, we go back to it and we remember the cover-up, right? Everything about it, all the names involved and Lefty and all of that stuff back in that era. And here we are, 32 years later, Don, and this incident happens. And to your point, you use the journalism word as the good professor, transparency. They all talk about it, but then they don't practice it, and then they wonder why the media comes and why people are peeling the onion back. Well, you got a dead body on campus. Like, you You think we're going to let you investigate it, without asking questions of the people that were there that actually witnessed it? I mean, and they've taken some level of culpability, but not fully. Now the Board of Regents, obviously the legal part of this is its own animal in that this is a sports wing of a university that's already mired in debt. This is going to cost the university hundreds of millions of dollars. There's no doubt about that, right?
Well, I don't know about hundreds of millions, but it's going to cost them because there is a cap on terms of how much, and that's going to be an interesting part of the story because there is a cap on how much, being a state university, you can pay, at least from the university's coffers. It will they're going to have to pay. There are plenty other ways that they can get this money to the family, and Freddie Gray got 6.4. Freddie Gray's family got 6.4 million represented by the same firm. I don't know. I have no idea, but I don't think that's the only. I don't think that's the only. Especially if they find there is not a toxic culture at Maryland, I don't think that might not even be the biggest lawsuit they face. They may face a lawsuit from DJ Durkin for breach of contract and for defamation. So this thing is, and then for that reason alone, I think that's going to be as good a reason, and not if any, as to why Wallace Lowe I don't think will be there. For an extended period of time, let's say that.
But you also remember what it did to the entire program in the aftermath and what 87, 88, 89, 90 looked like for the entire university. And as I've pointed out, they're going to be losing 38-3 at halftime a lot this year, and the story's not going to be what's going on the field, to your point, or who's going to win this week, or who's going to line up at left guard, or who's going to run the ball, or whether they're going to go through four quarterbacks. This is going to be the story until it's not the story anymore, in the same way that Bob Wade coaching a basketball team, with one of the Lewises in 87 or 88, that wasn't the story. I mean, this is not going to go away anytime soon, and more than that, they'd love to make it go away and write whatever that check is. This is going to be a prolonged experience, as you've pointed out, in regard to what happens once you fire these coaches and make this swill of change. Then those people are going to get lawyered up. There's all of this that's going to unfold. And they got to go play football next week, right? Literally.
The interesting part of that is I'm not saying that this was shaping up to be a unbelievable season at Maryland. But I think this was, and I really do believe, maybe I'm being foolish or naive to think you still have the same players. You're not, as much as I like DJ Durkin, he's still 10-15 as a coach. And this was his chance to sort of get the program back on track. And I don't know what Matt Canada as the head coach is going to do because he's never been a head coach before either. And I'm not sure about him being a head coach and a coordinator and all that. But the one thing I do know is they have more talent. Somebody said to me the other day who went to the scrimmage, they said they have more talent right now than they probably ever had since, in terms of the number of good players, since Bobby Ross. So they have the talent. And if they stay healthy, the schedule is still a bear. Opening up with a Texas team that wants to avenged last year's loss in Austin, as Central Florida wanted to avenge last year the loss in Orlando the year before and crushed Maryland with partly because that was the game that Kasim Hill got hurt. But I really think that this is still a team that's capable of winning 6 or 7 games if they stay healthy. But I just don't know. I have no idea what mental state they're in because we haven't talked to any of them in terms of football. So we don't know what the practices are like, and we don't know what Matt Canada is like as a head coach. We have no clue, and I guess we'll find out on Saturday at FedEx Field, and they'll be 21. I think they're 21-point underdogs. Somebody said. I haven't checked the latest line, but, they were 28-point underdogs a year ago, and they won 51-41. Matt Canada is known for his offenses, some of his offenses putting up some pretty big points. And I think this is an offense that's capable of putting up some pretty big points, given, the only question I have offensively right now is who's going to replace DJ Moore. Do they have enough receivers to do that? I think the running game, I think they have probably, given the number of really good backs they probably have the kind of depth that Ohio State has, and maybe they don't have that one guy who's as good as some of the guys at the schools that are going to compete for the Big Ten championship. But I think collectively they're really strong there. Obviously, the two quarterbacks, what Piggy did his debut last year. Though I think Kasim Hill is going to be the starter. I'd be shocked if he's not the starter on Saturday. And what
they held their own with Texas and then some last year. So to think they're overmatched, I just feel like this has been a very, very loud thing outside of their building, and I'm sure all of that hard knocks is going on inside. That we're going to go do this, we're going to do that. I don't know how they can't hear it, feel it, know it around campus when the kids are coming back. I think this is a hell of a challenge. If somehow they overcome this and have a 500 season even and score one big win, I'd be very shocked by that, Don. That would show me something about these kids.
Yeah, I can't remember what happened when the Ray Rice thing happened in Baltimore. Did they? I'm trying to remember if they won games, if they lost games. Did it not matter? And these were professionals, obviously.
Well, Justin Forsett happened after that, and it got better. But yeah, I hear you.
But I really do think that if, we don't know how the kids are responding to Matt Canada. We don't know if he's made any changes in the coaching hierarchy because we've only talked to Matt Canada one time for about 10 minutes, and every question was about, safety and, and heat and everything like that. It wasn't about how's Jesse Anabanam look coming back from a broken foot. How's Kasim Hill look coming back from ACL? Who's going to replace DJ Moore? We haven't asked any football questions yet, and that's what I'm planning on doing this week, at least a little bit, is writing a little bit about the football because, these kids have worked to have their season, and it's still, there are two concurrent stories, and as I said, this story, the death of, McNair is definitely going to be the story. But in reality, I think they're playing for two people this year. I think they're playing for DJ Moore, for Jordan McNair, and I think they're playing. And really, I think a lot of them are playing for DJ Durkin.
Anyway, he survives this, Don. In your mind,
I think he survives this as far as maybe getting his reputation back. But I just, maybe he will coach at Maryland this year. There was a part of me who didn't think that Urban Meyer was going to coach at Ohio State again. Obviously, a different situation, a lot more of a fan base built up. I don't think people really have gotten to know DJ Durkin, and when he first took over the job, he asked me about the fan base, and I said that you're between two rabid fan bases, Redskins and Ravens, and you have to hope one of them sucks every year, and usually one does. So and Maryland has to be good for that to happen.
Well, the Redskins are going to suck this year, so you got that going.
Right. So maybe they'll pay attention, and maybe it'll take them beating Texas to sort of have people talk about Maryland football as opposed to the death of just one player. That would not, as the two guys who spoke last week to the media, and they really did a great job. Johnny Jordan and Ellis McKinney really represented the university and the team exceedingly well in what they said, and they're not going to forget it, and they're not going to let this kid's memory die. But I really do think that they want to just go play football now. It's it's been 2 months. I remember after the bias thing, that team was torn apart. That team, first of all, lost probably the best, arguably the most talented player in the history of the program in Lenny Bias. So they were rebuilding from that. Then they had the fallout of guys being declared ineligible, and Tony Massenberg had to sit out, Keith Gatlin had to sit out, and I think Tion McCoy transferred later, but a bunch of guys. It was just it was going to be a rebuilding year anyway. So and then the following year they actually got back to the NCAA tournament, but things fell apart with Bob Wade pretty quickly and got put on probation, and Gary Williams came in, and it took him a few years to get it back up. Football back, the thing that people don't talk about is the death of bias with football. Bobby Ross ended up getting into a disagreement with an acting AD over his. Bobby Ross went on the field to argue a call after a game. They lost a tough game in North Carolina, and Chuck Sturts, who was the acting AD, sat him out or had him coach from the press box at Memorial Stadium along with Danny Ford, who was there coaching because he had gotten a one-game ban from the sidelines for something.
I remember that game. I was at that game.
Right, but Bobby at that point, and then Bobby lost all his academic exceptions as a result of bias, and he got out of there and went to Georgia Tech. And
I remember they were like on the verge of being ranked. They were like kind of coming along right then, and that was sort of the end.
Well, they were. I mean, they had won. I think they had won.
They had just gone Cherry Bowl or something like right around then. Yeah.
ACC. They had won 2 or 3 ACC championships. First year covering was '85, and they won the ACC championship that year. They beat Clemson down at Clemson. And Dan Plotke kicked the game-winning field goal and earned himself a scholarship.
You're a young old-timer, Marcus. I'm going to give you that right now.
What's that?
You're a young old-timer, Stedman would say.
Well,
Bringing up Dan Plotke. I love it, man.
Well, the thing I remember about Dan Plotke is the late Alan Goldstein used to say whenever Plotke entered the game in his I don't know if it's a baritone or what, he used to say, the Plotke thickens. So that was Goldstein's.
By the way, I got a little gift for you because you've mentioned Goldstein twice here, whom I loved and you love, we all love. Do you know that Goldie and I sat down in his kitchen back in 2005 for hours and just told old Ali stories and old Baltimore Bullet stories? And I present that as part of my best of sometimes. I played it about a month ago.
Yeah.
So I have this 6-part, 3-hour chat with these 6 half-hour conversations at his kitchen table over coffee and toast and bagels.
That's great.
And
one of my favorite memories along those lines is going to the Masters with John Stedman, and he would tell us stories about Babe Ruth and and all this and great stories from going back in his career. So I get that. Someday I'll be telling those stories myself, but maybe I'll have to come up with somebody a bigger name than Dan Plotke.
Well, I mean, at least you do go back 32 years that when we compare the bias circumstance for the university to now, it's much more of a gang tackle, I think, back then than now, because I think people are distracted now. Like to people in College Park, they're all in it and whatnot, but the news cycle just chews it all up, and the Ravens are playing this week, and the Orioles are still in last place, and the Caps are coming back defending. People are moving around onto other things. It felt to me like there was a white-hot spotlight on Maryland after bias for years. I know inside they'll feel that way at College Park. I don't know outside. But to your point, you are the first sort of relative optimist I've had on who thinks that they might still be representative on the football field this year, Don.
Well, these are 19, 22-year-old kids. It's not as if they're going to go out and play football. It's how they're coached, and I think they're going to go out there to play the season for Jordan McNair. But as I said, I think as long as DJ Durkin is not coaching them, they're also going to be most of them are going to be playing the season for DJ Durkin, and I think that it'll be very interesting. It'll be a very interesting opening game because, again, I mean, as we went into last year, I didn't expect them to win, and I thought they could be competitive, more competitive than people thought. Certainly cover the spread, but this year I think it's going to be hard because I think Texas is going to be really, really motivated, and after that, they have a schedule that they're going to go to Bowling Green, play home against Temple, play home against Minnesota. So I think they could be 3-1 going into that Michigan game. And again, it's a tough league. They're not going to, this is not going to be, this wasn't supposed to be a year they were going to go 9-3, but this is a year that some people expect them to go 7 they could go 7-5, 6-6, 7-5, and maybe pull off a game at home. I mean, because here's the thing: if Canada's offense is as good as it's, I think he has more talent than he had at LSU. I think he has more talent than he had at even NC State. I think Maryland offensively has a lot of talent, and if his offense is as potent as it's been at times at Wisconsin, where they put up 70, I think, against Nebraska in a Big Ten championship game, with mostly a running game. And
I remember that game. It was a shocking game. Yeah. So I really do believe these kids are going to be really motivated, even maybe more than they were, just to make people talk about football as opposed to just about, because if they keep losing, all they're going to talk about is Jordan McNair, and everybody's going to talk about what's going on. If they win, people are going to be forced to talk about both things, both them winning and coming out of this tragedy of horrific tragedy of a kid dying. Always a pleasure to talk sports and Maryland sports with Don Markus of the Baltimore Sun. You can follow him at SportsProf56. Don comes on a couple times a year. We usually talk some college basketball. All of our WNST programming brought to you by our friends at Royal Farms. Real fresh, real fast. I'm wearing the Chicken Palooza shirt out on the interweb, out on YouTube at our WNSTV Facebook Live as well. All of our WNST programming also brought to you by our friends at Sporticulture. I've got the flowers coming. They're going to be behind me on the video screen beginning this week. Officially licensed NFL flowers you can ship to a friend. Send your Steelers friends Ravens plants. It's nice. Send them Steelers stuff. It's fine. Sporticulture.com. Charles Newsonoff and Sons also with us as well. We also want to tell you about Freedmont Mortgage. Don't make a 30-year mistake by choosing the wrong lender. You need the right lender. Carl Delmont's going to join us later on in the week, talk about the Harrisburg Heat unique acquisitions via the Baltimore Blast of the Healy families. We'll be talking about that a little later on in the week as well. Don, last thing for you. The Terps play Ohio State on November the 17th. It's the second to last game, and I don't know, middle, last year was all stacked in the middle. This year it's Ohio State and Penn State at the end. You still see Michigan first week of October as well. Michigan State looks loaded this year as well. They come in early November. But Ohio State specifically, what do you expect on November 17th, and what do you have to say about what happened out there? Because as much as we've talked about what's going on around here, that still is to be determined to some degree. Out there, it feels like a slap on the wrist and move on, right? The business as usual.
I initially thought that's what was going to happen. Then I said, well, maybe they will take this seriously, and because the head of that commission was somebody who investigated the bombings at the World Trade Center back in whatever year that was, the initial bombings. And I thought, well, maybe they will take it seriously. And then I realized, well, it's still Ohio State. And you look at, DJ Durkin's record is 10-15, and I don't have Urban Meyer's record, but it's something like 178-31. And his record in the Big Ten is like, I think they've lost 4 games since he's been there or something like that. So you knew, and the fan support at the Horseshoe every home game. So you knew, yeah, there's a good chance somehow he's going to survive it. The thing that's shocking to me is they finally announced a 3-game suspension, and Urban Meyer, who I think is a pretty intelligent guy. He loses the press conference big time. Doesn't mention Courtney Smith's name, doesn't apologize to Courtney Smith.
It was gross, wasn't it? It was gross. It really was.
Doesn't do it on Twitter. And to me, I almost feel that they should have gone back and said, you know what, we're going to form a new commission. We're tacking on another 3 games for that press conference, but they didn't do that, obviously. And so, what do I expect on November 17th? Pretty much what we've had for most of the Ohio State, Maryland, I can't say rivalry, competition or matchups. And by that point in time, I think Maryland, obviously, if they can stay healthy, might be able to play with them for a quarter or maybe even a half. But I don't think, I thought initially, we were going to see, I really thought we were going to see a matchup of offensive coordinators that are now acting head coaches with the guy the receivers coach out at Ohio State, Matt Canada. But obviously, Urban Meyer will be fully entrenched back on the field by then. And I think what you'll see is a lot of people wearing red at Maryland Stadium, except that they won't be rooting for Maryland. They'll be rooting for Ohio State.
I just wonder if they're still in the national championship picture then, or whether their little leaky boat situation winds up becoming a distraction for them. And look, all these programs have their distractions. They all have their boosters. They all have their expectations. But, deaths and scandal and, the media showing up knocking on doors on domestic violence and press conferences that are less than what you would expect if you were the victim. Let's be honest, right? All of this is giving me that sort of dirty feeling that I need a shower to start the college football season this week, Don.
Well, even if none of this happened, you still need that shower.
Of course, yes.
Okay. So, but getting back to Ohio State, the most interesting story angle going into that game, if the quarterback at Ohio State remains Dwayne Haskins, is going to be the debut, the return of Dwayne Haskins, the kid who started the movement at Maryland in terms of recruiting, and then quickly abandoned it when Randy Edsall and Mike Loxley were shipped off. I would like to see a Kasim Hill match up against Haskins, because everybody who's seen them both play, who played against them, high school coaches, say that Maryland's guy is better. So we'll see about it.
Don, always a pleasure, man. I appreciate you making some time, and I know I was chasing you around for about a week, and I figure as this story unfolds, we'll continue to learn more about it. We'll be following you, SportsProf56 out on Twitter, as well as at the Baltimore Sun. It is football season, and we'll have a game to talk about when it's all over with this week once they play Texas. Always appreciate the visit, man. We'll be reading.
Take care, Nestor.
Don Markus of the Baltimore Sun, my one-time colleague and longtime friend now. I've been knowing him going on 4 decades as I turn 50 on October the 14th. Our deadline up this week for our Nashville road trip out at WNST.net under the Road Trips tab. You can listen to anything we're doing around here this week. We got a great guest lineup in anticipation of some fake football this week and some real football next week. Find it all out in the buyatoyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear. No static at all, just like Steely Dan. They'll be performing at the Model Lyric on October 11th to kick off my 50th birthday week. I got to figure out what to do on the 12th, and the 13th to honor Sammy Hagar, and the 15th to honor Jim Palmer. I'm going to the Jack Daniels Distillery on the 15th, so I'm honoring Jim Palmer there, who blocked me on Twitter, by the way, so I'm still pissed about that, but that's another story altogether. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel, where I'm wearing my Chicken Palooza shirt at Royal Farms. It's up at the end of the week. Make sure you're signing up for Chicken Palooza. You can win chicken for a year. Make sure you're using the ROFO rewards card as well as the app on your mobile device. When you're pumping the gas, you'll get your Western fries and your fried chicken free. I got me a $5 Chicken Palooza box over the weekend, and I enjoyed it immensely. especially the Western fries. Hadn't had Western fries since like maybe early July. So I'm down. Little ketchup, do you upright. It's Rofo, real fresh, real fast. Last things first, the WNST tech service is there. So when the Hayden Hurst situation broke out over the weekend, you get it first there. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Dennis Colatzos will be here on Thursday, driving you home from 3 until 5. It is the SSV on WNST, getting you ready for fake football. And then, of course, next week, real football. Well, real football for the Terps this week, so at least we got that going for us. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.